Thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm your host, Daniel Davis. And for those of you who own pets out there, we have a wonderful show lined up for you. And for those of you who just like to get out in the woods and see if you can talk to animals or listen to what it is that they're saying, this is what we're going to be talking about today. Joining us on the Beyond 50 radio program today is a gifted intuitive and animal communicator, and she's going to talk with us about the secrets of being able to communicate with animals. And I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program Sonia Grace. And Sonia, thank you for joining us here on the program today.
Thank you for having me, Daniel. It's nice to be here.
Is this a lifestyle that you chose ever since you were a little girl?
Yes. I mean, the gifts that I have, I think my earliest memory is 2, and I have things that happened at 5 where I, played in the woods I grew up in and saw all of the spirits of the trees and the plants, the Davic force. And, at 12, the entire spirit realm walked through my bedroom. I've had, just a continual sort of opening of these gifts that I have. And along with working with people, I also work with animals. And so I find working with the animals a pleasure because they don't have the ego and the personality to go through to experience healing. So when I do healing work on them, it's fairly immediate.
Mm-hmm. Now, when people typically come to you, what do they usually want? What is the goal that they're trying to, I guess, unravel?
Well, if someone comes to me for a reading, I get everything from, they have a relationship that's in trouble. They're in business and they want me to look into business matters. They've lost their job. What's on the horizon? What about my finances? I've had lots of people call me who lost money in the stock market and they want to kind of regroup and come to some understanding as to what they should do now. What's next? Mm-hmm. I get everything under the sun. I also do healing work, so I have people who call me who need a body scan or their pet is having illness problems and they want their pet to get a scan, and then I actually go in and do healing work. And all of my work is over the phone. I do everything long distance, so I have clients all around the world and pets all around the world.
Now, how is it that people from all over the world are getting to know you? Is this just kind of by word of mouth, or you're just probably doing some really phenomenal work, it sounds like?
Thank you. Yes, I think it's word of mouth. I think that there's been some really wonderful articles that came out in the newspaper and some magazines. So it's slowly building where people are hearing about me. But primarily, I would say the majority of my clientele is word of mouth.
Now, do you typically work with all types of animals, or are there just specific ones that generally that you work with?
No, I work with all types of animals, and probably my favorite client is a woman back in Tennessee who has monkeys. And I work on all of the monkeys, and Serena, Willie, Maggie May, Pincher, and Chewy, and I know all these monkeys really well, and the really cool thing about working with her monkeys is that she'll call me up and she'll say, Pincher's got something going on with his eyes. They're foggy. They're not opening real well, and I'll go in and I'm here in Portland and she's in Tennessee, and I'll take stuff out of his eyes through the healing work that I do. And she'll be on the phone with me saying, she says, I can't believe it. His eyes are clearing up right in front of me. And so, I've got this gal actually experiencing firsthand what's happening with her animals. And her monkeys are very complex because they're very social. They're very much involved in the socialization of their little pod there. So when one of them has been moved or one of them is, in the main house with her, everybody else gets out of joint and gets, concerned about where that member of their society is. Mm-hmm. Very interesting. We do a lot of work on the socialization of these monkeys and what, who the alpha is, who the female, who she's the gal who owns the monkeys is obviously she's the lead female, but boy, they're constantly vying for that position.
It sounds like such an interesting life that you have there to be able to communicate with animals. Now, as you were saying earlier, intuition or being intuitive about what animals are communicating is probably the first step. But what are some other ways that you go about being able to do this?
Well, when I tune into an animal, I literally, sort of, for lack of a better term, I mind meld with them. I see my mind is connected to theirs, so I hear their thoughts. I can actually just tune into their thoughts, and I hear them talking back to me. And the funny thing about some of these animals is they actually come across with different types of personalities. I remember talking to someone's dog once, and the dog sounded like a 50-year-old Englishman.
Wow.
It was going to ask me if I wanted some tea. I mean, it was it was really interesting, and they have different types of personalities that obviously we know our pets all have personalities because they all have kind of their own funny little quirks. But gosh, some of the animals that I talk to really have a different kind of behavioral way of talking, like they're real slow and, well, I don't know, she's just really not happy with me today, that kind of thing. Or, I've talked to other little dogs and they're like, well, I think maybe I should go in the other room now.
Imagine a dog with a personality like Dennis Rodman.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, that's scary. Okay.
Now, I know that there was a story that I was reading, I believe it was on your website, which we'll give folks a little bit later here, but that you were talking about a golden retriever that was out of the backyard. Now, what had actually happened there?
Well, if I recall that story correctly, the golden retriever ran out of the backyard and was picked up. Is this the story that you read? The dog was picked up by someone out, yeah. And the dog was taken, and it was very frightening. I was looking with the owner via long distance for the dog, and in the course of, several days and being able to track where the dog was, we were pretty much about, 3 steps behind where this dog had been. And the dog actually was brought back, I believe, by divine intervention. And she did get her dog back into her care and, recovered. And he's actually doing very well now. But it was scary because someone had picked the dog up and was, abusive and really not nice.
Yeah. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say these things happen a lot, and, I just had a call from Florida, and this gal had lost her dog, and she said, I was sitting in front of my computer, and I said, let me just MapQuest where you are. And so I got a map of where she was on my computer, and I said, okay, this is what I see. Your dog went out your backyard, which would be south. And she goes, yep, that's the way he always leaves when he takes off. I said, then he went west, and he made a sharp turn, and he went north. And she goes, yep, that's where he runs. And I said, then he turned around and he ran south again because he ran along what looks like a big grove of trees. She goes, yeah, that's the park. That's where he goes.
Wow.
And it was great. And I said, but he overshot the road that you live on, and he went past it. He went south of it, and he turned down Maple Lane. And she said, yeah, Maple Lane's beneath us a couple of blocks. I said, that's the road he's on. He's on Maple Lane. I said, you need to go put posters all up on that road. And so she did. She made posters and put them up on the road. And I think it was a day later, she got a call from the pound that was closest to her. Sure enough, there was her dog and one of those posters. And the person who found her dog wrote a note on the poster and said, found your dog on Maple Lane.
Wow.
And it was great. It was such great confirmation, But a lot of times when I help people find their pets, I'll give them directions like this, but the person on the other end of the phone says, "Okay, well when I'm home from work, I'll look there." And it's like, no, you have to look now.
Exactly.
This is happening now.
I mean, how would you feel if you were lost and somebody says, "Well, I'll wait until I'm done watching the ball game, then I'll come and look for you"?
Exactly.
Sonia, it's very curious that we bring up things like missing pets, because I know that maybe it's just me, but it seems that every time I go to a store somewhere, there's always posters up for missing pets. And I kind of wonder what's going on out there. Are people taking them? Are these animals just getting tired of their owners and running away? I mean, what do you think it is?
Well, I think that we're seeing a lot more of that because there's people have tons of pets. I mean, gosh, just in my neighborhood, I see people walking with 3 and 4 dogs. It's people have a lot of pets, and why pets are getting out. I mean, look at our society. We live in a much smaller space, closer by each other. Maybe we're all at work. Nobody has time. The dog gets out of the backyard. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons. I don't necessarily see a a large group of disgruntled dogs,
right?
But sitting around having tea in the afternoon talking about their master's not home. But I do feel that people's lives are very busy. And here's the cool thing. You know how people are they love having pets, and they'll say, oh, we really want to get a dog, or let's get a cat. Animals, on the whole, are healers. And when you're not feeling well, have you ever noticed how your dog or your cat will come and just lay on you?
Right.
It's like they're healers. They're picking up your energy and they're carrying your energy around. So in the behavioral market, you've got your dog perhaps moping around because you're depressed and you're not feeling well. It's like your animals will reflect your behavior. I had a woman call me once and say, my dog won't stop peeing on the bed. And I said, well, obviously your dog is upset with you about something because that's why he's doing it. And I talked to the dog, and the dog said, yeah, she's not taking me out for walks. I don't get to go out in the backyard. So when I actually was able to talk to the owner about what her habits were with the dog, walks and going outside and that kind of thing, it was very limited. Thus, the dog's giving her the message, Mom, I'm going to give you a direct message right in the middle of your bed. So this is the behavioral thing that a lot of times people don't stop and perhaps observe their own behavior and why their animals might be, behaving the way they are.
That's an interesting point, Sonia, and it reminds me of a dog that I used to own, and she would always shred things, but they were only things that I had a lot of contact with. And when you say that and I look back on it, I'm sure she was probably pissed at me a few times, and that was the only way she could get back at me. Things
Right.
such as shredding a TV guide into confetti, or a specific blanket I used to put over my feet, while I was, down watching TV. She'd have that. And it would always be shredded, though, in a really neat pile. Not all over the place, but right where I could see it. And then I would have known it. To me, I actually found it then just kind of cute and funny. But now when you say that, I realize maybe there were some things that I was doing that just weren't making her very happy.
Right, exactly. And I have 2 very large cats myself, and my cats do not like it when I leave. And so my cats, like a dog, actually pick my shoes up and carry my shoes into the other room so I won't go in. And I always look at them and say, what are you guys, dogs? What is this? So I wanted to tell you a really amazing story about a Jack Russell I worked on recently, Eddie the Jack Russell, who is an older Jack Russell. I think he's like, I want to say 12, 13 years old. And they thought he had a tumor in the right side of his face. They did sort of, I think, an X-ray or something that the doctors felt it was a tumor, and the vet, and I looked at it and I said, it looks fluid filled. And again, this was long distance. I was working with a client who lives out of town, and I said, it looks fluid filled. Let me go in there and just see what's what. And I went in and sort of examined the whole area. It looked very squishy and fluid like. So I said, let me just go up his nose and see what I can find. And I went up through his right nostril and I saw a burr and a little piece of stick, and I pulled those things out. And again, we're talking on an energetic level. I'm pulling this stuff out, and all of a sudden, and I went in and I unblocked what I saw now was sort of a real swollen, channel where the fluid passes through, and I unblocked that. And this gal was on the phone with me, and I said, "Okay, here it comes, and I'm literally watching him pulling this fluid down his nostril. And I said, here it comes. It's coming out his nostril. It's coming. And she gasped on the phone and she said, "Oh my God." And I said, "What? What's happening?" And she said, "He has fluid gushing out his right nostril."
Wow.
And I said, "Oh, that's so wonderful. Are you taking pictures?" And she just laughed. It was so great, and he's been much better. His right eye is not bothering him anymore, and that whole area of his face has totally gone down.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really great.
It's really amazing because, for those who may be familiar with The Horse Whisperer, even the movie, there was, that about the horse and him trying to heal the horse, but more importantly, trying to get the horse to understand that it wasn't his responsibility entirely that the girl was hurt. And that's what the trauma of the horse was, is that he felt that he had done something wrong when they both got seriously injured. And just recently, I know my wife and I had watched a wonderful documentary. It was called A Dog's Life, a Documentary, and it was about a Shih Tzu around 9/11. And what had happened when you talked earlier in the program, Sonia, about how animals heal, is that this dog was going out and helping people find comfort after the attacks at 9/11 in New York City, and helping them to calm down and heal. It was like, sort of a security blanket. And then the owner of the Shih Tzu, finally a light goes on and began training her for, I guess you could call it trauma care, hospice-type care, where they would take the animals in and it would actually help the patients to improve. And, it's just phenomenal to realize what animals are out there for, and just how we sometimes as humans, when we take on these pets, that we think that they're separate from ourselves, when in truth we're very truly connected, just as it sounds like you are.
We're very connected to them. And, I have people call me all the time who have lost their pets, meaning they've died, and they've asked me, if I can contact them, which I do, see the spirit realm. And I have oftentimes the spirit realm standing in my office waiting to talk. And oftentimes I see... I always get that image of Whoopi Goldberg in the movie Ghost, when she's telling everybody, "Get out of here now." Mm-hmm. And I oftentimes see people's pets, and they're on the other side. But what's very comforting for all of us to know is that a lot of times our pets are with, our grandparents or our dad or mom, or if somebody has passed away in our family, they're with them.
That's an interesting point of view.
Yeah, and it's really wonderful. I mean, my understanding of the spirit realm in terms of humanity is that we have an obligation to the soul group that we come through. And so it's not just a bing, bang, boom, you pass away and you're going to incarnate again because you've decided you're going to incarnate. No, you have a responsibility to the soul group you came through. And maybe I usually see about 3 generations out that we're actually the guardian angels to the people that are left behind, our children, our grandchildren. People are looking after us on the other side. And about, like I said, 3 generations out, then they start to incarnate again. Mm-hmm. And the same with pets. I mean, I think a lot of times pets will stay on the other side until we get there, and then they incarnate again. And, hopefully in some cases they come back into our lives.
Mm-hmm. Now, Sonia, in Portland, Oregon, there is a rescue called Macaw Landing. I don't know, are you familiar with that at all?
I've heard of it, but I don't know them.
Okay, well, what it is, it's a rescue sanctuary for parrots. And it was started by a gentleman who had actually had himself a parrot, a macaw from South America, went away for 2 weeks, and came back to find that the bird had literally chewed off all of its breast feathers. And he was trying to understand why this animal would do this, and it came to find out as he studied and found out more about these wonderful birds, is that they are very family-oriented, very community-oriented, so there's a lot of loyalty, sometimes better than most humans in marriage relationships, actually. And the fact is that he had discovered that these animals really should be just left in nature and left alone. And so he created this sanctuary for people who buy these parrots, thinking that they'll make great pets, and they don't realize what it really takes to have something like this. So my question really is, are there just animal types that should not be pets?
I absolutely believe that, of course. I think that there are animals. I had a client of mine fly me out to Florida to see them, and she took me to the what is it called, Busch Garden, the it's like a zoo, but there's animals, and she had me tune into all of the animals as we walked through this incredible facility, and it was just beautiful. And you know, it was so interesting because most of the animals were content. When I communicated with them, they were okay. But the animals that were really suffering from depression and were very unhappy were the monkeys.
Really?
And I believe it's because of their consciousness and that they are so much closer to sort of a higher consciousness. And the ones that were so cute that had problems, that wanted me to fix all of their problems, were the turtles. Those really big box turtles. Oh my God, they were so funny. They were one of them. I tuned into one of them, and he says, my back right foot really hurts, and kind of in a whiny voice. And I stood there and did healing work on these turtles for a long time. And I just thought that was so amazing, And actually, the one animal that I found very difficult to communicate with, very difficult, almost like I just couldn't get in there on the same level that I did all the other animals, were the crocodiles.
Ah.
Yeah, and those are old guys,
Mhm. Now, why did you think you were having such a difficult time? Was it their armored plating or their temperament, or?
They felt so prehistoric. I mean, they go back so far in time. I just felt like they weren't perhaps in the evolutionary chain of consciousness in the way that some of the other animals have, continued to move ahead.
Mhm.
I mean,
Now,
they're great.
I always think this is, for me, a curious question, because this day and age we seem so caught up in having animals to be pure breeds. And to me, I'm kind of the old-fashioned, the thing could be a mutt for all I care, because they seem to be the most well-rounded, it almost seems. What do you have to say about things such as that?
Well, I'm not, I'm more the doctor on the end of the phone, meaning if someone calls me and they have a purebred such and such, my main concern is just communicating with the animal and finding out what's wrong and helping the animal. But to go into whether or not, the one thing that I can say to you from my heart that I don't agree with are, puppy mills and these places that are cranking out,
That's
dogs.
probably why I wanted to address that, is just for that simple reason, yeah.
Yeah, it's not good, and it's very. What's sad to me is, all of these animals have a soul like we do, and there is, there is a place for them in this world, very much as there is a place for us in this world, and to somehow disregard them and not realize the healing qualities that they bring into our lives, we should be so grateful, is sad to me when people don't realize that. And a puppy mill is a place that I don't think really realizes that, and I hope they get it someday.
Yeah, certainly we hope they do that, because it certainly isn't very enjoyable to see how an animal has to come into this world that particular way. It seems almost far from loving. Sonia, I was kind of curious, do people actually come to you, or they call you on the phone and they say, I'm interested in getting a pet. What do you think a good pet type is for me?
I've had people ask me questions like, I'm thinking about getting a dog. What do you think? They've never asked me what type of dog to get. And usually, if the person who's asking, a client just recently asked me this question, she's gone through a lot of really difficult stuff in her life, and it was just the perfect type of healing solution for her to actually bring a dog into her world. And I encouraged her and said, absolutely, I think you need to go get a dog. I don't care what kind of dog, get a dog. and again, that's more, I'm looking at things on a soul level. And when I read people at a soul level. When I look at animals, I'm looking at their soul. So it's a little bit different for me. I have to really shift my focus. Say I'm doing a reading on a person, I have to shift my focus to their personality or, their ego stuff that goes on, because I'm so deep in sort of the soul level. So it's kind of looking at it in a different way.
As you've communicated with animals, Sonia, there are people out there who will get a dog, or they may get a cat, maybe even a couple of dogs. And it just comes time they just realize, well, I don't know, and they end up giving these animals to someone else or selling them to someone else. What has been your experience with how the animal acts or reacts to a situation like that?
So I've had a tremendous amount of clients who have adopted or taken in animals that have been abused or, mistreated in some way.
Or even just given to somebody else. They could have came from a loving family, but for some reason the family just gave them away or sold them.
Exactly. And most of the animals have, in fact, integrated really well. They love their environment. They tell me how much they love their environment. But there was one dog back east
An eastern dog, probably from New Jersey, huh?
Yeah, he was like the renegade dog who just couldn't get over the fact that he wasn't living in his old house. It was not a different owner. It was a different house. They moved. And this dog was just like a boomerang, man. He went back to this old house time and time again. And I don't know how many times I was on the phone with the client saying, nope, he's at the old house. And sure enough, that's where he was. So I think that for the most part, pets are extremely adaptable. It's the pets that I do more work with that have been abused, that I've had to look back into their past and maybe even give the owner some information that they didn't have. The age of the pet, this is what I'm hearing, this is what I get. He's not 8, he's really 10, that kind of thing.
Interesting work that you do out there, I'll tell you. Now, you were talking about monkeys earlier. What has been one of the most exotic animals that you've communicated with?
Well, I would say it's between the monkeys and I've worked on parrots as well. And I feel of course, in walking around, the zoo in Florida, I was able to, look and work on all of these different animals that were there. But I would say the monkeys are at the top of my list because they really get that I'm there. And in fact, speaking of getting it, I've got a cat, Roy Boy, who I work on once a week. This cat was told by 3 different vets that he was not going to make it. He had really bad digestion problems. He couldn't hold food down. His throat was raw. His stomach was raw. Kidneys were starting to go. I've worked on this cat once a week for a year. And this cat's kidney, the numbers, when they do the tests for the kidneys, usually when the kidneys start to go, the numbers just keep getting, declining. His numbers for his kidney tests have actually gone in reverse. The vet told the owner of this cat she's never seen that before in her life. So the numbers are actually in reverse. He's doing really well, no more digestion problems. All of it has completely turned around. And, there's 3 vets that are just shaking their heads going, wow, what did you do? So the thing about these animals is, as I said to you at the beginning of the interview, they get it. And this cat, Roy Boy, actually goes into the room where the owner is and sits down on a pillow or the bed and waits for me to start working on him. Every time I call, that he comes running in and sits down because he knows I'm going to work on him. And the monkeys are the same way. They just get a whole different kind of energy about them, and they are very receptive to my work. And they love to tell me what they really want to be eating. The monkeys are always telling me, tell her to give me more carrot sticks or, whatever it is that they want. It's very funny.
Oh, I'll tell you, great stories. It's good to know people like you are out there so that people can not only understand what their pets are feeling and thinking, but also probably understand more about how they are and what they're thinking as well.
Thank you. It's really wonderful to get to work with as many pets as I do people because I hold both in high regard. And I feel that our animals really are here and helping us. They're helping heal us. And so we have to take really good care of them.
Well, Sonia Grace, thank you for joining us here on the program. Go ahead and give out your website so people can find out more about you and maybe contact you in case they have a sick or a lost pet.
Sure. It's www.sonja, SONJA, Grace, GRACE.com. Or they can call me direct at 503-746-6525.
Well, Sonia Grace, again, thank you for joining us on the Beyond 50 radio program. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. It was really nice to be here. Thank you.
You bet. So there you go, folks. If you got a lost pet, a pet that may be sick, or a pet that seems just disgruntled, and you're trying to figure out what it is that you might be doing so you can make that pet happier, certainly give Sonia Grace a call and visit her also as well at her website. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. I also want to thank one of the sponsors for making this show possible, and that is Tree of Life. About 25% of Americans over the age of 60 have type 2 diabetes. It's a condition many believe to be irreversible. Gabriel Cousins, MD, the founder of the Tree of Life Rejuvenation Center, offers a 21-day Reversing Diabetes Naturally program that is medically supervised. Imagine the freedom of no longer living with the disease. As an example, a 76-year-old man with type 2 diabetes went on the program. By the second day, his blood sugar dropped from 224 to the mid-80s, where it has remained. His wife also did the program, and together they switched on to a new level of joy, health, and sexual vitality in their relationship. Join the Tree of Life family that is located within a majestic valley in Arizona to experience transformative whole-person wellness. Simply call 520-394-2520 or visit the website at www.treeoflife.nu. Thank you for joining us today. You've been listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. Be sure to visit us at our website at beyond50radio.com. That's the number 50. Sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter as well. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.